This is the Brella Community Services Podcast with Michael Morgan and Raj Sahota, talking about the I'm Still Me project, a support talk about dementia.
Hello, everybody. This is Brella broadcast number 3, and we've got some very special guests. Raj Sahota, I think it'd be a good idea if once again you explain your role at Brella and what you bring to this broadcast. I am a humble host and co-host with you, but Raj, explain what you do day to day for Brella.
All right, so usually my day-to-day looks very different than what I'm doing currently. I am the day program manager for the South Surrey location of the adult day program at Brella. And I've also taken on the I'm Still Me project. So I'm the research and evaluation coordinator for it. So I'm the one that you will see out and about doing all of the presentations. My face will be plastered everywhere before we know it.
Well, and you have with you Louise Taylor. Louise, you hold a number of hats within the Brella organization, but probably the one I'd like to focus on at this point is, what does I'm Still Me mean to Brella and mean to the campaign?
I'm Still Me means regardless, we are still humans with a life that is worth living. And we must remember that when people are struggling. So I'm Still Me has allowed Brella to really shed a light on such a debilitating disease, and a light that is a little positive, a little empathetic, lots of kindness, different ways to approach and treat people. And we try and bring light and empathy to this discussion.
And we have as our major star a man I have immense respect for. He came out of the broadcast field. He's been a spokesman for major governmental corporations. He's widely respected. He's an MP for Fleetwood Port Kells, and he is the one and only Honorable Ken Hardee. Good morning, Ken.
I'm only honorable when I'm in the House, and even then there's questions about that. You just have to ask the Speaker. Yeah, in fact, honorable sticks to somebody who lands a cabinet post, which I have not and actually never wanted to be. Those people work far too hard, far too much. I wanted to mention at this point that we're live streaming this on my Facebook page. And to folks who are already dialing into this one, I'm here with the Brella organization. We're talking about dementia, and we're talking about the various dimensions of dementia. But Brella is in our spotlight because they've just received federal funding to do really, really good things in the community. And so during the course of this, and by the way, I'm their guest, I'm just tagging along, but I think between a lot of us here and my old friend Michael Morgan, we will delve into, the things that a lot of people are concerned about and confused about. And indeed, there is a lot of confusion around dementia. It sweeps up 23 different maladies that can afflict people. We know, for instance, that there's about 50 million people worldwide that are suffering with some form of dementia. That cost in economic terms, if you wanted to try and put a dollar value on it, is well over $1 trillion a year. So there's a tremendous amount of interest in research, looking for cures that have been very elusive to this point. But the focus of Brella's activities and the activities of other organizations, and we can talk about, sort of the whole picture, is on the ground, the issues of assisting people that have some form of dementia and are suffering, and their families are suffering. And so the kind of work that Brella and the other organizations that are receiving federal funding will make a measurable difference in the quality of life right here at home street level in our communities. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and what I hope we can get into.
Tell me, Ken, you're cheek to jowl with the government of the day. Are they aware that this dementia tsunami that is building up and getting larger could have the same impact as climate change, economy, opioid crisis. I mean, it's right up there in the pantheon of things that could well affect society in Canada.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact is that the federal government, this federal government, and federal governments all over the world are putting an awful lot of money into the research in order to, find either ways of mitigating the impacts of dementia or a cure. But a cure is going to be elusive because there's so many different types of dementia that are involved here. Our federal government since 2019 has invested close to $250 million in research and support. So yes, we absolutely agree, and we do know that it's a tremendously important issue. And the dollar number that I mentioned always could be bigger. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, there are companion pieces to this that we think about, when we're looking at, for instance, the impact of the pandemic and the problems that we had with long-term care facilities and how vulnerable people there were to the impact of that virus. And so, there's a lot more money in the healthcare system that will look after some of the parallel or tangential things that we need to be concerned about when it comes to working with communities through, the whole issue of dementia.
So, Ken, I'm going to go back to Raj, but just before I leave you on this one, am I hearing you say that you believe the best practices for monies that come in are for the community to deliver the services? I mean, this is a grassroots. You can't go top down. It's got to be at the grassroots level. Do you believe that that's where the best efforts can be made with the money invested?
No doubt about it. The fact is, particularly because there is such a wide band of things that are swept up into dementia. And it comes at you from so many different directions. 23, 24 different ways are currently listed, and there'll maybe more. As it's like autism. Every time you turn around, there's another piece of the spectrum that's been added on. If there was a cure, then the focus here right now would be to get people to clinics or doctors to get the shot or get the therapy they need to basically rid themselves of this issue. But we don't have a cure. So therefore, it becomes a matter of what do we do to live with it? And what do we do to improve the quality of life, for families and for individuals that are dealing with dementia? We could easily get into some very, very difficult subjects like medical assistance in dying, and we've had so much pressure, especially from Alzheimer's groups, etc., about advanced directives, and we can talk about that if you wish. So this is a multifaceted issue that we need to come at from many different ways because it's coming at us from many different ways. And so the question to you is, how much time do you have today?
Yeah. Now let's go to Raj. Raj, one of the things that you said to me was that people are hiding from Alzheimer's. They're hiding from dementia.
Yep.
They're frightened of bringing that loved one out. You said to me at one point you thought it was the tip of the iceberg, that this is a hidden, desperate struggle to hang on to normalcy.
Yes, it really is. I'm finding that a lot of our seniors, or just a lot of the community, is very fearful of going to their doctor. Their biggest fear is that they will now be labeled. So being labeled as someone that has dementia is extremely debilitating in their eyes. They have a tendency of assuming that now they'll be seen as a burden, or, it's an end of their meaningful life to them. But in reality, that's not the case at all. And this is where we as grassroots organizations need to come in. We need to educate the general public. We need to be educating the professionals. We're finding a lot of the times the doctors don't even know what an adult day program is. So how are we expecting our seniors and our communities to find the help that they need when the medical professionals aren't even aware of what help is out there?
Louise, you have the unenviable task of trying to find the monies to continue the work, to go into the community, to reach out to people, to be a friendly voice, to be a place where they're not afraid to say, Help. Tell us about the fundraising and where does that money go if people donate?
Donate, thank you, Michael. They could donate to Brella Community Services Society. We've got a donation button right there on the front of our screen. And the money goes directly into programs beyond dementia. We have a dementia program, but we also take care of older adults who might be marginalized, might need a bit more in terms of support because of their financial restrictions. And so Brella offers a wide variety of supports into the community, and fundraising is vital for us to continue. And for us to help folks with dementia, it costs about $150 an hour. And so I've got campaigns going on right now with the Wave 98.3, giving people awareness. Raj has been on Red FM talking to the Punjabi community, which was really amazing, and we'd like to continue to do that. And come this fall, we are having a Cruise for Dementia Set Sail for Brella fundraiser to help with all of our services, and in particular dementia, because it's expensive, and as great as the grants are that we get from United Way, Fraser Health, the federal government and the provincial government, it's not enough. It just doesn't touch it. We need more of more.
Ken RD, is that reflecting the people coming into your constituency office? Are you finding dementia is becoming more and more into the conversations they're having with you?
Not at this point. I think Louise mentioned that it's kind of a hidden thing, and it's something that if families are struggling with it, given the cultural makeup of our riding and Surrey generally, there may be a reticence to actually reach out and ask for help, which is interesting because the investment into community organizations like Brella, which, give or take is about $38 million. It's interesting to note that the organizations that have stepped forward to provide assistance, many of them focus in on specific groups, specific cultures. And this is necessary because every culture will have its own barriers, boundaries, whatever you want to call them, things that will get in the way of people getting the kind of help that's available to them. So the awarding of the grants, and I think Brella got between $400,000 and $500,000, something of that nature.
Yeah.
That recognizes the piece of it that Brella is taking on, but there are others, and this is right across the country that get involved with other aspects of it. And the piece that I think I find one of the most valuable about this is that part of all of this, I mean, we can't fund every organization that is trying to create a difference in the communities, but there will be a collection of learning, of things that we find out that can be shared universally in Canada and around the world, for that matter. And the same is true. There'll be organizations that the government of the UK is funding. The United States is funding many as well. So the sharing of information, which is all part of the funding that we put in, will be a huge value, no less a value than the sharing of the research projects that are taking place around the world.
Yeah. Raj, last week and the week before that, we had Roger Hope, who was the widow of Deborah Hope, the much-loved global television anchor who got early onset Alzheimer's, who was forced to retire and passed away last year. And I think he underscored something that sticks with me, and I want to get all of your opinions. This idea about I'm still me. When you visit someone repeatedly and they have less and less cognitive recognition, it can get dispiriting and discouraging. And it's very hard to believe that, gee, do they know me? Is there a quality of life? What do we do with people who apparently have vacated their own bodies and brains? And he spoke about how he stayed with her to the very end, was doing music and had her humming along. And it encouraged me to believe that this campaign about I'm Still Me has real value. They are, who knows how they're perceiving the world, but there's somebody in there worth reaching out to.
Yes. So generally what happens is we may view them as they're not the same person as they were before, but they're still them, which is why this project is called I'm Still Me, because at the end of the day, it's always person first. So it's no longer, so-and-so, this person over here, they have dementia. It's one of my clients and they're living with dementia. So we're trying to make sure that it's still person-centered, it's person first. They're still them at the end of the day. We understand that it's very difficult to try to have meaningful conversations with someone, especially as they're further progressed into their dementia diagnoses. But it's not about the cognitive stimulation, it's about creating safe space. Are they feeling safe to be around you? How do you make them feel? They may not be able to communicate all the time with you or show that they understand what is happening, but they will understand much more than it seems. I personally had a client who is further along in their dementia diagnoses, and I was at the mall, at the Samiamo Mall, and they recognized me from across the food court. And he came over and said, I know you. So it was, he may not have remembered my name, and he's been my client for the past 5 years, but it's how we make him feel when he's with us. He feels safe. He recognizes our faces. He recognizes that this is a safe place. I'm okay. It's a good place to be. So it's
If I
about
could
creating
add
those
something
safe
to
communities.
this, yeah, if I could add something to this, Raj, I've read research that in fact, even people in a coma maintain a very acute sense of
Yes.
smell.
Yep.
So if you have a cologne, an aroma from around the house,
Yes.
there's a very good chance that the person will actually remember that, and it
Yep.
will, stimulate good things. So it's kind of an interesting piece that I stumbled across, and I thought, well, okay, that kind of
Yes.
makes sense.
That works with dementia as well. Certain smells can trigger memories. Music will trigger memories, photographs as well. So if you're having a hard time and you're finding that it's getting more difficult to carry a conversation or talk to the person that you love, bring in old pictures. Talk about those. Majority of the time that will trigger a memory. It will unlock something, and for a moment of time, there can be some clarity. So they could be out of that constant state of confusion that they might be feeling.
Louise Taylor, you're planning on this gala, which is a fundraiser, but as well as a fundraiser, I would think that the idea of drawing in caregivers, family members into what would be a celebration is probably extraordinary in terms of its healing value.
We often host caregiver events and celebrate them. And we have caregiver days and we celebrate them. And we have opened up our community room twice weekly to support groups who come in and need a safe space while their loved ones are at our day program, where they can share and collaborate and sometimes just get stuff off their chest. It's just another one of those services as that's a part of the day program that we relish in providing, because caregivers also need a safe space.
Ken Hardy, from a demographic point of view, and you look down the road, you say, well, a lot of this dementia is occurring with baby boomers. Why don't we just wait until they all pass and then the problem will solve itself? It's not quite that simple, is it?
Well, I think the emotional harm that can be done to families, the people who used to know the person that you projected, even though you are, as was said, the same person inside. No, we obviously can't leave families on, to their own devices, unsupported here, which is why Brella and the other organizations that have received this federal funding are doing invaluable work in the community and deserve the community's support. It isn't just up to the federal government. We all have a piece of this at home, and and it's one of many things that clamor for attention, but this is truly a quality of life issue. So no, we do need to pay attention. We do need to, do the outreach and even let people know that there's organizations like Brella available, so that even at the first sign that maybe, a family member, and it can happen at any age. Deb Hope is a good example of that. A tragic example, I guess, is the better term. So, okay, something's going on here. Where do I go for help? Well, where do I find Brella? How do I even know that Brella exists? So this is one of the tasks that this organization and others have to do.
Yes, we're
Do you
finding
think?
that sorry,
I'm
Michael,
sorry, go
we're
ahead.
finding that on average, caregivers are spending about 26 hours a week doing unpaid work. So that's roughly 4 hours a day on top of the regular 9 to 5, including their commute. I read somewhere in 2011, we had spent $8.3 billion in out-of-pocket cost, taking care of our loved ones at home and making sure that they're staying safe in their community. And that's only projected to double. As of 2031, it should go up to $16.6 billion.
Do you think, Raj, that there will eventually be a cure for dementia? Is dementia with us as a human species? Is it just part of the aging process, or is there an actual pathology that says if we could find what's causing it, we could eliminate it? I mean, I know you're not a doctor and all this, but you were in the trenches. What do you
Yeah.
think?
So unfortunately, the way that dementia is progressing, it's a fatal disease, it's a fatal condition. We even have childhood dementia now, which will affect anyone from birth to the age of 18. And primarily what happens is that by the very end, the body starts to shut down because the brain is no longer able to keep it functioning, which is what happens with dementia and Alzheimer's and Lewy body and Parkinson's, or not Parkinson's, sorry, dementia, Alzheimer's, Lewy body and frontotemporal as well. So that is what we're finding. Now, the thing with dementia is that there are certain risk factors that can add to your probability of eventually developing dementia, but it also has no cause. So you could do everything right and make sure that all of your risk factors are taken care of. You're not smoking, you're not drinking, you're doing, you've got physical activity, you're living a healthy lifestyle, you have a balanced diet, you're making sure your environmental factors are in check, and you could still end up with dementia. Or you could be the complete wild card and do everything that you wanted to, live on the complete wild side and be 104 and perfectly fine. So that's the biggest problem at the moment.
So it's like Russian roulette.
Pretty much. Genetics does play a factor into it. Majority of the time, when there's early onset Alzheimer's, it is related to genetics, but environmental factors, lifestyle factors also play a big deal.
Louise Taylor, we're going to do a last pass. Let's talk a little bit again. People who are viewing this are saying, okay, in order to get this sense of comfort with Raj's community outreaches and to continue it going, because it has to keep going, even with all the money that Ken was mentioning, that gets sucked up pretty quick. Tell me again, how can I donate? How can I add something to the pot to keep this communication moving?
BrellaSociety.ca, and the big yellow button at the top of the screen. Click it, and you'll be offered many ways to pay. It's seamless, streamlined, and the support that people need. It's worthwhile, and thank you.
Okay, Ken, we're going to leave the last word to you. Being in a government, and it's now been a number of years, would you say, and I guess this is a softball question, but it's real, would you say that of any potential government, that the one that's going to pay the most attention to an issue like dementia is the one that you serve currently? Is that a fair statement?
I think I'd broaden it a little bit, Michael. There's really, sort of two main dynamics in Parliament right now. There's a conservative dynamic and generally what we would call a progressive dynamic. Um, and, despite what I would say about conservatives and their leader, et cetera, I worked in radio and television on the prairies in southern Manitoba. And I have to tell you that conservatives are big-hearted, generous people.
Yep.
They may not demonstrate it, in Parliament that often, but they have a job to do and they try their best to do it. I think though that there's an aspect that really does separate the progressives from the more conservative people. Progressives, I guess it goes back to that old saying, some people see things as they are and say, why, and other people see things as they could be and say, why not? So, Brella is a why not organization. They will go with or without federal funding. They will do their best with what they have. The federal government, a progressive federal government, and that would really the Liberals, the New Democratic Party, and even to a certain degree, the Bloc and the Greens would all support more support for organizations like Brella. Conservatives tend to be, they try to be fiscally responsible, and sometimes that's a good idea, but sometimes they kind of miss the fact of what an investment is all about. And I was talking to the Prime Minister about this the other day because, we have a budget coming up. And there's general expectations, in the financial community and generally in the Canadian citizenry that we will, demonstrate some fiscal responsibility. We all our dynamics, all our economic foundations are really good. AAA credit rating, lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, like all of those things that say that the fiscal health of your country is in pretty good shape. But we also know after some pretty significant investments during the pandemic that, we're a little closer to the line than we want to be. But that said, we do look at these things as an investment, but it's the kind of investment where the government puts the money out, but the benefits, the return on investment accrues to the community. It doesn't flow back to the government's bottom line. And so when people start talking to you about the danger of deficits and et cetera, you have to think of that piece because there is a return on investment, but it shows up someplace else. I would also add, though, and this is good news for Brella and all of the other organizations in BC who've received this funding, is we have never had as good a partner in healthcare as we do with the British Columbia government. They have stepped up. They have partnered with us. You compare what's going the performance of the healthcare system, especially during the pandemic, with other jurisdictions across Canada. BC has been wonderful. And I have no doubt that they'll continue to be that way. So, back to the heart of your question, Michael, yeah, the progressives will tend to do more. The conservatives may not do as much, and they've got their reasons for doing that. That's the kind of decision society as a whole has to make when it's time to cast a vote.
You and I were at an event once, and you said something. I want to close with this, and then I'll give you the final word before I say goodbye to Raj and to Louise. I once asked you why, and you may not remember this, but I sure do, why it was when you were entering politics, you wanted to become a liberal, and you looked me right in the eye and you said, because no one gets left behind. I thought, wow, that's a motivation. Maybe some people do, but the whole idea of the foundation of no one left behind, and that plays right into dementia. It's very easy to leave these people behind, but there you are. So congratulations.
Well, I would add one other thing, and this comes from Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada and Bank of England, and sometimes mooted by some wags as perhaps a future leader of the Liberal Party, but we don't need to go there in this respect. But at a Liberal convention, Mark did appear, and he made some comments that I thought were really quite outstanding. He said that, he's been attached to the markets for all his working life. And he knows of no other mechanism that is so dynamic and so forward-looking as the free enterprise system. But he says there quite often is a gap between what the market prices and what it values and human values.
Yeah.
And where you gap between the price that the market puts on something and the value that humans put on that same thing, that's the work of politics. That's where politics will or will not move in to close that gap. And I think that, the government that I've been involved in and serving with since 2015 is all about closing those gaps. And as you mentioned, Michael, not leaving anybody behind.
Well, thank you for being on this program. Thank you for your support. And I know you outside of your role, and you're widely respected for very good reason. Raj, as always, as my co-host, it's a delight to hear what you have to say and bring us up to date. And Louise Taylor is just a ray of sunshine that you rarely get in this world of darkness. So we love to have her on board. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of podcast number 3 for Brella. Any closing remarks?
Thank you, Ken. We really appreciate your time, your insights, your care and dedication. And hopefully we will be tag teaming again in the not too distant future. Really appreciate all of your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Raj?
Thank you. I'll finish off with what I usually say, and I will always say, is that optimism, positivity, and hope is something that we will forever need. And we must remember that what is essential is invisible to the eyes. So we have
Good
to
point.
focus and find it.
Ken, how many last words can we give you? You take the last one. I mean it. That's it.
Well, no, I do appreciate the opportunity. I do wish Brella and all of the organizations that receive funding well. Storytelling is really important. And so to me, this is not going to be a once and done event, Michael. Louise, Raj, I do a monthly webcast. Healthcare is one of the things that are really important. I'd like to invite you to join me on one of our things. And mind you, you've been on mine now. And, lots of people are actually tuning in online right now.
Wow.
So I'm going to put the address to your donation in the chat area of our webcast. So hopefully you'll see a nice little bump there. It's been really, a pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. Let's keep up this discussion.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
And Ken, just a bit of housekeeping on that. Your numbers for our output for our on your podcast so that we can share that with the government would be really welcome. And thank you to all your listeners and watchers.
You bet. Well,
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This was the Brella Community Services Society podcast with Michael Morgan and Raj Sahota. For more information, go to our website at www.brellasociety.ca.